Hey everyone, welcome to the Virtual Executive Director podcast. My name is Becky Caldwell and I'm your host. I am an executive coach for nonprofit and mission-driven leaders, and I serve as the actual executive director of the Virginia Highlands Festival in Abingdon, Virginia. I finally figured out a great catch-all phrase for what I do, and that is empowering nonprofit leaders. So if that describes you, fantastic. I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for finding us. Before I dive into the content this week, which is the top 3 things that I learned at this year's Virginia Commission for the Arts Conference, I wanted to mention a couple of things real quick. First of all, if you have not done so yet, I know who you are, and I am looking at you right now through your phone, or however you're listening to this. And I see that you're not yet a Patreon supporter of the podcast. Now, come on, you know how nonprofit works, right? So pop on over, just tap the link right there in the show notes and become a $2 a month Patreon supporter of the podcast. It would mean the world to me if you did that. Also, I will shout you out on an episode. So just head on over there, check it out. Just $2 a month recurring donation to the podcast. And that would mean just the world to me. Secondly, I have slots available still for executive coaching clients. So if you would like some one-on-one, intensive, fantastic, mind-blowing work with me, maybe not mind-blowing, but it'll be really solid stuff. We're going to get you unstuck. We're going to get you loving your job again. We're going to get you moving forward on those big projects you've been either stuck on or delayed on. So email me, Becky, at virtualexecutivedirector.com, or visit the website, virtualexecutivedirector.com, and check out what it would mean to have me as your executive coach, your champion, your full squad of backup dancers. That's what it's like to have me as your executive coach, or so I've heard. The third thing I want to mention before we jump into this content this week is I have 3 organizations to mention this week. I am so excited. Look, if you don't know this yet, I'm about to tell you, we have a Facebook group just for nonprofit leaders called the Executive Director Mastermind. And if you would like to join the mastermind, then just pop over to Facebook, or I'll include a link in the show notes and ask to join. Now, okay, keep in mind that if you don't answer the questions, like if you skip over that, I just automatically decline you, because we're already up to 300 members in the Executive Director Mastermind. And look, no one has time to chase you down. So when you apply to join, answer the questions. And if you are indeed a nonprofit leader, then I will accept you into the group. And then you've got access to us virtually around the clock, because we are a global group of people, and there's always someone awake who can answer your question or help you deal with the crazy thing that just happened. So in that group, I asked people if they were subscribed, then I would shout out their organization. So I am going to do that right now. Thank you so much to Sean Puller of the Garth Newell Music Center, Ashley Hall Johnson of the Constellation Coalition, and Marjorie Moore of Voice. I am beyond thrilled to have you in the group. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast. Thank you for your support, especially Marjorie Moore. That Marjorie Moore is also a Patreon supporter. She gets it. So thank you so much. I love you guys. You are amazing. It's phenomenal having you in the group. And gosh, thank you so much. My heart is warmed on this cold winter day. So, all right, on with the show. Okay, so I've just come back from the VCA's ArtWorks Conference, and it was fantastic. Janet Stark and her team did an amazing job putting together a conference that it started with a bang. Like, okay, so she's a theater person. I recognize that is why it was so effective. But she started the morning session with a session from the artistic director of Theater of War Productions. And Theater of War is a group that does staged readings of ancient texts that help communities deal with a communal trauma. And as part of that effort, they commissioned some music to be written. And let me tell you, we got taken to church that morning. There was no better way to open the whole conference than with basically like new gospel, using ancient Greek texts. And we were on our feet and stamping and clapping, and it was just amazing. So congratulations to Janet and her team. And if you don't know anything about Theater of War, be sure to check them out. They are a really cool group doing really great work, bringing using that lens of theater and ancient. I say ancient texts. I mean, we're talking about Greek plays, right? So the artistic director is also their translator, and he's able to take old words, and because these are universal truths, ancient truths, then they still apply now because we are human beings and we actually don't change all that much. So, Theater of War, check them out. Now, the top three things, I learned a lot more than three things, but this is a podcast, and I actually need to get back to my day job because I took basically a whole week off from my day job just for a one-day conference. I just needed that time and space to process through things. But I'm going to share with you my top three things. Like, I'm going to share with you what they said, what the presenters said, and then also how my brain interpreted that information. Like, what did my brain do with that? And how am I going to apply that moving forward? And then you can take these lessons for yourself and see how you want to use them too. So the first thing I learned was from a session on advocacy. And this is really about like how to talk to your government about funding you, basically. And in this session, I learned the phrase to use when someone is kind of taking a dump on public funding for the arts. So if you're an arts organization, listen up. This is a good one. And if you are not an arts organization, this is still a good one. You can spin these words for your own needs. So what you say is, there is no greater affirmation of freedom of expression than public funding for the arts. I'm going to say that again because it's so good. Thanks to Margie Vanderhei for these words. There is no greater affirmation of freedom of expression than public funding for the arts. Ooh, God, that's so good and juicy and wonderful. Because look, I'll be honest, I go back and forth on public funding for the arts. And not because we don't need the money. We all need the money, right? It's just that I don't want the government in my art making. I don't want them telling me what I can and can't create. Also, there are a lot of forms to fill out when it comes to government funding. There's a lot. So, like, I would rather have $10,000 from a private foundation that is just like, here, take my money, you're going to do something great with it, than spend literally weeks filling out a government grant. However, there is no greater affirmation of freedom of expression than our government putting their money behind that. Now, if you happen to live in a country where the government doesn't fund this and there is no freedom of expression, I don't know. Actually, I'd love to hear from you. Actually, I would love to hear from you. So, contact me somehow. Email, through a contact form on my website, or if you're in the Facebook group, the Executive Director Mastermind group, post something in there. But I would love to hear how you guys do it. But okay, so that's what was said in the session. Now here's what my brain did with that information. Because Margie also told us to be sure to thank our legislators. They need to be able to say, here are the good things that were done with government money. Here's the cool stuff that was able to happen in my district because of funding. Or here's how my district is better than your district because we funded the arts. So be sure to thank your legislators. And the way that I interpreted that is that I really need to build a culture of gratitude in my organization, because my organization, the Virginia Highlands Festival, has been around for over 70 years, and we bring a lot to our town. And the local government gives us a lot also. It's a symbiotic relationship. But I'd say since I started working there, because I didn't really know any differently. And this was sort of spearheaded by some board members who are no longer on the board. But there is a sense of entitlement among some of my board members. And this entitlement about like, well, the town should give us money. They should give us more money. Everyone should give us money. We do great things and we work so many volunteer hours. And if they had to replace us with paid staff, it would be way too expensive and they'd never do it. And the truth is, they could replace us. Everyone is replaceable. No one is too big to fail. Even the Roman Empire died. So, no one owes us anything. And I talked to my board president about that, and we both felt the same sort of icky, like, ugh, I can't believe we were like that. That's so gross. And so we are going to work on building a culture of gratitude. I'm going to have note cards made. I'm going to provide note cards and envelopes for every board member. We are going to begin board meetings with, hey, everyone, think of someone who helped you this past month. Write them a quick note right now, and then hand them to Becky. Like right now. You are not leaving until you've handed her a thank you note to somebody. So, okay, maybe we won't be that, harsh about it, but you know what I mean? Like, it's important. So that's what we're doing with that information. The second big thing that I learned is that donors give based on your aspirations, even if they aren't achievable. Well, that blew my mind. So donors get as jazzed about what you might do as what you actually do. And so, okay, here's how I took that and translated it into something actionable. So, what that says to me is talk about your big goals, talk about your concepts. You don't have to talk about only what you've done or only like what you have concretely in place. That, going along with my, with that moment in my TEDx talk, and that was a subtle, not so subtle flex right there about my TEDx talk. But, that quote from Daniel Burnham, make no little plans. They have no power to stir men's blood. And this is so true. So tonight, I was able to put this into practice. I just did a talk at our local Civitan club, which I think there were maybe 12 people there. So a nice intimate crowd. And rather than talk about, here are these things we're doing on these dates, I talked about the concept of belonging and how we are working behind the scenes to create the right environment for belonging to happen. That was cool. I could feel the connection in the room. And I really hope that they were proud to hear that. I know at least one person was, because he told me so. So that was really great. So that's kind of how I took that. So think about your aspirations and use that to stir the blood of your donors and also get them to open their checkbooks. Okay. The third top thing that I learned at the VCA conference was that small nonprofits have a lot of advantages. And probably the biggest advantage we have over large organizations is our ability to know our donors. I mean, really know them. We run into them in the grocery store, which has its own awkwardness, but you know what I mean? We can really know every single donor. I can hand address all of our donor envelopes and not be totally sore. Not have a cramped hand. Though I wish that weren't the case. But I can. And so use that to your advantage. I'm definitely going to use that to my advantage. One of the ways that we learned how to connect with a donor is to, just talk to them. So if you're having lunch with a donor or a prospect, or you run into them at the store or at a restaurant or at the coffee shop, whatever, if you have time for a real conversation with them, ask them this one question. Ask them to tell you about an influential person in their life. Make up whatever reason you want to know about it, but ask them, hey, would you tell me about one really influential person in your life? Here's what you're going to learn from that. You're going to learn what's important to them. And you'll be able to take that information, add to it what your organization does, and then you've created the perfect case for support. So, for example, we actually did this exercise in the session. I turned to the person next to me, asked him to tell me about an influential person in his life, and he told me about his dad. And his dad was influential to him because his dad was a really steadfast kind of guy. The person I was talking to said, I became a lawyer just like him. I guess he really did influence me. And he appreciated that his dad would tell it like it is, that he was kind, but that he did what he said he would do. And so after those 90 seconds, I knew how to position my organization if I were to ask him for money. I knew to position my organization as, we are 70 years old. We are over 70 years old. We're a tradition in our community. We are steadfast. We're all about handing down traditions from generation to generation. And so that's how I would approach him if I were approaching him for a donor. So okay, how am I going to put this into practice? Well, I have this great question now in my back pocket for the next time I run into a donor. I'll need to sort of practice it a few times just so that it becomes a little bit more automatic and not so weird. But in the coming 2 months or so, we're going to be having events for major donors, and I'll be talking with a lot of people. And so this is going to be my go-to question. Tell me about an influential person in your life. So that's it, you guys. Those are the 3 big things that I learned. Remember, there's no greater affirmation of freedom of expression than public funding for the arts. Donors give based on aspiration, even if it's not achievable. And small nonprofits have a lot of advantages, like our ability to really know our donors. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. If this helped you, please share it with a friend or colleague. Maybe you want to send it anonymously. That's okay too. Most podcast listening services have a share function, so be sure to share it out. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. If someone shared this with you, then please go ahead and subscribe. And like I said at the beginning, If you want to reach out to me directly, if you have any questions, or if you implement any of these things, I really want to know about it. So email me, becky@virtualexecutivedirector.com, or message me on Facebook, or message me on Instagram, where I am virtual_exec, and let me know what you did with this information. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We shine brighter together.